Welcome to Clarity Digital Pod. I'm Sefati, and today we're diving into healthcare marketing, branding, strategy, and the performance metrics that matter. Joining me is Tiffany Kobashigawa, an award-winning healthcare marketing executive with over 20 years of experience. We'll talk about why marketing is often overlooked, the power of branding, and what healthcare marketing leaders should prioritize. Let's get into it. Tiffany, how's it going?
Hi, Al. I'm doing really well. How are you?
Pretty good. Good to have you here today. For our audience, if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Yeah, no problem. Tiffany Kobashigawa is my name, and I've been in healthcare specific marketing and communications and sales roles for more than 20 years. Whenever I thought about getting out of the healthcare space specifically, they just keep dragging me back in. So I have
Yeah.
experience in other industries from a consultant standpoint and doing things on my own. But as an FTE, it's always healthcare.
What is the state of healthcare marketing today? Is it true that because it is a necessity, it's often overlooked at many healthcare facilities or healthcare companies and providers?
I do. I think that, gosh, I would say 20 years ago, let's just talk about hospital system. I
Mhm.
don't think people in hospitals understood the matter of fact, I know that they didn't understood that they needed a marketing department. And in fact, one of the lectures that I had in class more than 20 years ago, I'm not saying exact date, but one of the topics in class was sometimes you have to show leadership that there's a need before there is an actual job. And marketing for a hospital was one of the examples that she gave. And she talked about how her sister was a marketing professional and went to a hospital and said, "You need to market yourself, and this is why." And I thought, little did I know at the time, I had no idea that I would get into healthcare marketing. I was still an undergrad trying to figure out what it was. And in
Mhm.
fact, I'm classically trained, if you will, in public relations and television and radio, and then kind of just graduated with the writing as a background and kind of fell into marketing and then healthcare marketing specifically. So it's been a weird journey, but you're absolutely right. People underestimate the need oftentimes. And it's funny, I feel like as marketing professionals, depending on your industry, and we're talking about healthcare, we continue to have to prove our worth and why the work that we do is valuable and what it is that we do. I think we're mysterious to a lot of people and we get reduced to maybe ads. That's it. And we make things look pretty, right? Give it to marketing, have
To
them
make it-
put on this deck, make this flyer look pretty. So we become decks are us or flyers are us at a less sophisticated organization. And then a lot of times, oftentimes, because we're dealing in healthcare, with surgeries and outcome like, it's just not a thing that's, valued as much, and we don't do a good job of marketing ourselves, quite honestly, which I think is weird, and we I think we went through that, at the organization where we met and worked together. That was part of the fight, that was part of what we were
Yeah.
doing, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Exactly. I remember the weekly calls we had on Mondays. I called it evangelism, just preaching marketing and preaching, evangelizing and about marketing need for it, and that is understood it. You're still doing healthcare marketing? I would assume, is it more like digital these days? Is it offline, online? Is it a combination of both?
It's combination. Marketing now is at least 80%. Depending on the organization that you're at. It's
Mhm.
between 70 and 90%. So let's just call it on average about 80% of all marketing now. So it's gonna be very digital forward. Whether you're talking about digital online, whether you're talking about digital in person. So look at all these digital boards that we have outdoors, like out of home, even though out of home is part of the traditional mix, they're doing it in a very different way and it's digital too. And then television is obviously part of a traditional mix, but then you're looking at connected TV, right? So people are streaming. And so your ads have to be for the audience who's going to be watching in a connected environment, such as Hulu or Tubi or whatever those Roku, whatever the platforms are.
I was actually watching the Super Bowl yesterday on Tubi's.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that was but yeah, that highlights the importance of having omni-channel, multi-channel marketing approach to healthcare marketing, especially since you don't fully understand the customer funnel. You can create a customer funnel in a healthcare environment, or is it a proactive approach, or is it more of a all over the place and you just have to be everywhere?
So I tend to think it's a little bit more all over the place and not so much a funnel is just understanding the journey.
Mhm.
Do journey mapping.
Journey
I would focus on more of a journey mapping and then look at all the different ways that you interact as a brand with the prospect. So I would focus on journey mapping rather than just they come in this way and then we go this way and then they go this way. No, just map all the different ways
Yeah.
because it's going to come from everywhere and you have to have a bunch of contingency plans because healthcare marketing specifically is so unique, unlike I'm buying a widget, a tech tool, t-shirts, or some
Mm,
sort of consumer good.
yeah.
It's a service, and you get it not necessarily when you need it, you get it when you have to have it, when it's a
Mhm.
necessity, and especially with let's not even get started on government-sponsored healthcare, right? That's
Yeah.
a whole 'nother you're
Mhm.
talking about, like, Medicaid across the country and Medicare across the country, and the ACA plans, that those are very special, it's a whole different animal. I think one thing that we see is explosive, and I don't know if you wanted to talk about this at all, but if you talk about all of the integrated PCP-based, but integrated care models that are popping up that are app-based, a couple of them didn't make it. So, like, Forward Health
Mhm.
didn't make it, right? Forward, they folded. They spent a lot of money on the tech, and they focused all on the tech, and they came out with not just their wonderful when you check in, you got the big screen, and I was a patient for a while. I was a member with them, for a while, and the big screen when you check in, you stand on a platform, very futuristic, right? It's all up there on the board. You stick your hand there, and it actually collected your vitals, which was cool. But then they didn't focus on the platforms. I'm sorry, they didn't focus on the provider relations part of it and shoring up relationships and contracts. They didn't focus on the people portion of it. They focused on the tech only. And so they invested in a bunch of pods and then they went under.
Mhm.
They put up like millions and millions of dollars in their last like stretch of their last funding and then they went away. But then you look at a company like Tia, right? Tia Health, they did the opposite. They focused on the environment. They focused on making sure it was a great experience. They focused on the brand. They focused on their personal relationships with their members. And it's also subscription based. Both are subscription based. And they focus on the members. Now, I will say they've got a very kind of, their tech is behind. So it's
Mhm.
a little frustrating because they don't have the technology at a level where I would love it to be. But we do the best that we can, but my interactions with my providers are excellent. When I go into the facilities, the brand experience is excellent, and I don't feel like they're so tech forward that they're not working with their patients and they're not focusing on providing care. So I think they've got a good balance, but I know that they have an update coming and their app is gonna get better and their website's gonna get better, but I think they've got a good combination and I hope to see them through. I also have a traditional PCP, and I can go back to them. So I'm all over the place because I just want to get the appointment that I need when I need it.
Yeah.
And so if this hospital physician is not available, then I go over here and all that. And I won't say what my medical group is, but
That's all right. Yeah, there's a lot of
anyway, we weren't talking
complication.
about that. But I do love the explosion of all the tech enabled platforms for sure to get care, to access care for
Mhm.
sure.
No, it's all related to our conversation because we were talking about the customer or patient's journey, right? And
Hmm.
there's a lot more than tech that goes into it. There's referrals from your doctors or
Yeah.
whatnot. Then there is your provider, how much of that they're going to cover, where they're going to send you. Is it within network? Is it outside the network? There's a lot
Yeah.
of blind spots, which some call it the dark funnel. Basically, you don't know what's going on, so you just have to, yeah. So you just have to have this. The mapping out a customer or patient's journey would be, it's a really good advice. But how do you do that? How do you map that out? Is there a framework to map it out?
Traditionally, what I would advise and
Mm,
recommend if somebody were to hire me as a consultant is look internally first. do an assessment of your current touch points. How many ways are there to speak to your member currently right now? And then let's see what that looks like. And when are you touching them and talking to them? And then figure out also prospects when you currently talking to them. So I would say the framework is to begin with what are you currently doing
Mhm.
and then go from there. Obviously, who are you missing? What is the audience that you feel you don't have that you feel that you want? And I think a lot of organizations now, they've gotten away from being very targeted and taking it out of healthcare for a minute. They're very doing that death of what marketing people hate, or marketing professionals hate is, oh, my product and service is for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are isolated from that in healthcare, which is great, but this isn't just about healthcare. But what
Mhm.
I see, right, this not let's just put healthcare to the side for a second. What I see out is people are going back to, oh, my product is for everybody. And they're maybe getting away from the hyper segmented, which is not the time to do that. It's funny because I was scrolling the internet as one does, and I thought it was just me. So remember, I don't know how old you are, but for me, I'm just gonna date myself. Champion as a brand back in the day was
Mhm.
like the least expensive brand that like kids didn't want because it really wasn't a name brand
I do remember that. So,
anybody
yeah.
cared about. And it
Yeah.
was like, okay, but it was good quality though.
Mhm.
So
Ex
if you got a thing, it was like your parents would say, "Why do you need another pair of sweatpants or whatever?" Because those are so they were all the quality was always there. They
Sure.
just didn't have Adidas or Nike or whatever, right?
Yeah.
As a brand. Now, do you know how much Champion goes for now?
How much? I don't know. Haven't.
It's so expensive. So
Yeah.
now Champion as a brand is up there and is
Mhm.
seen as like high end as a Adidas or a Nike, Puma, and the
Yeah.
like. And I just said I thought it was just me because I bought a couple pairs of sweatpants for myself to work out in, and I thought, "Is it this?" I chose them because
Yeah.
they were good quality, but I thought they were less expensive. So for I will give kudos to that marketing team because to go from the kind of low cost leader with high quality and to understand what you have as a product and then flip it and turn it around in a
Mhm.
generation is what you really want to be like, if you wanna be able to do that, is a skilled thing to be able to do as a marketing professional. So I'm just gonna tip my hat and say kudos to the champion marketing team, for
Yeah.
making that happen. So I think that's the kinda thing that you need to be worried about and working on. I guarantee you, I don't know anybody at Champion, and I'm not getting paid for this by them, but I guarantee you they had to do internal conversations and where are we selling now? How are we currently selling? How are we interacting with customers? What and then from there, once you can figure out how you're doing it, you can grab data to see who their change, I guarantee was based on data. That was a data-driven change that we
Yeah.
have good quality. So if you just put it out there, people will respond in kindness because we do have quality products. Because they've
Mhm.
always been really good quality. They just didn't have the name brand. Now they have the name brand with the new generation because they didn't have the stigma. So they understood their new target audience. They weren't trying to target to me to say, hey, Tiffany, who's of a certain age, our
Mhm.
products are really good. They weren't trying to do that. They went to a younger generation that
Don't
don't
know
know
that. Yeah.
them. So I think companies need to do organizations need to do more of that from a brand
Yeah.
standpoint.
Yeah. And having a little bit of experience in that field, sports retail, I just know there's a lot of white label brands and Chinese brands. So in order, you cannot compete with the cheaper stuff.
No.
So you got to pull yourself up. And that kind of highlights the importance of branding. So let's just talk about branding a little bit. Like I've noticed that more and more successful companies are revisiting branding and they just even us when we start working with new clients, the first thing we ask, hey, can we see the brand guidelines? We just don't want to do SEO or PPC. We want to do everything according to the brand. Branding is one thing that helps companies just stand out. Do you also agree with that being the case for healthcare companies? Should they focus on the brand? Like for example, Kaiser, I think they have a pretty good brand, even if you may not like them. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Kaiser is actually a really good test case
Mhm.
because So I worked at Kaiser, again, dating myself, gosh darn it, now. So
Sorry.
I worked at Kaiser specifically during the Thrive campaign.
I remember that. Yeah.
Mhm. That was, oh my god, what was that, like 2002?
Yeah.
2004,
Early
2010?
2000s for sure. Yeah.
Mhm. So it went in different phases, and that was Campbell Ewald at the time who led
Mm,
that. And basically what they said was, "Listen, you have an identity issue. We need to change that." And what they said is, "We need to change from the outside in." Because they had to focus on inspiration to make the change that they needed. And a lot of people who were employees at the time grumbled, "Oh, they're doing all this on the outside, but they haven't really changed what they needed to do on the inside." And they were. It's
mm,
just you can never go fast enough for people. And when I say change it on the inside is utilization rates, access. Kaiser's had notorious for having access issues. I don't think this is any newsflash. But because they have a closed physician model, you can only go to their physicians and their facilities unless they just don't have what you need from a medical standpoint within a certain amount of mileage from your home, then you're forced, and that's what you buy into, right?
mhm.
So they're always going to have use issues and access issues, but so do all other medical groups.
Yeah.
And so the unique problem that Kaiser had was they are both obviously the insurance company and the provider. So they can't blame, as what happens is the provider often then blames the insurance company for paying late or paying slow and their contracts and the contract negotiation, whatever, right? With the provider and negotiated rates and all that stuff, right? So that happened. So they don't have that kind of problem by and large. Other health plans and hospital systems that have to work together, but they certainly do have their own set of problems. So what they did was they changed the look. They came up with an inspirational, aspirational value proposition, which was they want everybody to thrive. And then in Spanish, it was viva because they don't have a direct translation for thrive. So thrive in Spanish was viva, live.
Viva. Yeah.
And they just said we have to lean into this brand and this brand positioning and just abandon everything else. So they really did a good job of really leaning into it, and it was Thrive, and it was, like, new look and feel, and they updated everything, and they made their employees, which I was at the time, the poster children. Literally, my 2 children, who are now grown, and myself were in multiple campaigns, meaning that we were in directories, and we were in billboards, and we were in hospitals, and so were a lot of other employees at the time. And I think that's a long way of answering your question is, it's so important.
Mhm.
And they led with the brand.
Yeah.
They led with branding the personality and tweaking the personality. They led with that. And then everything else followed so that they were able to keep their brand promise. And I think that it probably took them about a decade, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
But I think that they were able to do it, but they were brand led. And then you see that a lot, and they had to make the shift. And you got a lot with organizations like Nike. They're famous for doing that.
Yeah.
Apple. So, and Google, like they all do it now. I think maybe Nike was probably one of the first. So then,
Nike and Apple maybe very good at brand.
mhm, actually, I lie. You know who did that first?
Mm.
Coca-Cola.
Oh yeah, of
They
course. Yeah.
are they
They
everybody else
also.
imitated the Coke, yeah, but from a healthcare perspective, I really do think that Kaiser Permanente was one of the first to be a brand-led organization, and I say brand rather than just marketing
Mhm.
and or sales, because
Yeah.
I'm very intentional. Because brand is its own animal, its own beast, obviously within the framework of marketing,
Mhm.
which I would argue sales
Yeah.
is obviously part of that framework, but yeah, so, I might have a couple things I feel passionate about when it comes to branding, yeah.
No, that's awesome. And I agree with you. I really enjoy their talking about Kaiser. I enjoy the whole experience. Everything's consistent. And that's one thing I did like about Kaiser when we were with Kaiser as a customer. They have a very consistent experience and brand, which highlights that it doesn't matter which industry you're in, healthcare, retail, As long as you're selling to humans, these things matter.
Yeah, absolutely. And you and I talked about basically the key activities that marketing executives need.
Let's talk about that.
I think the first thing is the developing KPIs,
Hmm.
and the ownership of those KPIs. It belongs to the entire organization.
Yeah.
And so I think fundamentally we have not done a good job of educating our stakeholders about what it is that we do. So we talked about this at the top of this podcast, right?
Yeah. Yes.
I think we have loved the autonomy that we have when we have it. We just go off to the side and do our own thing. Unless we are a brand led organization, then I think we fall into that trap, regardless of industry. They know that we create ads and make things look nice, but beyond that, don't really have a clue about what marketing teams like ideally, how they're structured, what it is that we do, and what resources are actually needed
Yeah.
from a resource perspective. And then that makes it hard then to measure the worth of marketing activities. And then when we do tell them, here are the metrics, we overcomplicate things.
Yeah.
Right? Like we just make it so hard. And really what we need to be focusing on is like four major categories of spend, outcome of that spend. So what are the best performing activities within that spend? The change that spend creates accordingly. What are the blend of activities by product? Where's the overall blend of product agnostic brand for general brand awareness?
Mhm.
I just think that we're not doing a really good job of educating and then empowering our stakeholders. Because listen, sales and marketing is one of those things where everybody in the organization thinks they can do your job.
Yeah.
People don't walk around pretending like they can be the lawyer or compliance or accounting.
Deal with that
Never
every
heard
day. I
I've
deal with
never
that
heard a
every day.
finance person getting an email like, "Hey, have you ever thought about?"
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
They don't get the emails that
That we
get
get.
as
Yeah.
marketing professionals. We have to include our colleagues and leadership to ensure that there's a shared understanding and then an agreement regarding the KPIs and then that are most relevant to the organization. Because it's not, there's basics, but it's not so important. Like we have to have these KPIs. We'll get there.
Yeah.
Like we have to lead with that. But what we need to do as marketing professionals, as marketing executives, is do a really good job of saying, hey, here are the metrics that are standard, best practices, best use case for our organization. And here are the ones out of that litany of metric. Here are the ones that I think we should be tracking on a monthly basis and why. And get their buy-in because then you've educated them and it's going to take some time to do that. And then work with them that way. I don't know how you feel about that, but I'm really passionate about that.
No, this is actually a great that you brought it up. And I'm going to bring up the organization that you and I used to work together and where I met you. It was really hard to do it at that organization because they had multiple centers in various states,
Hundreds.
hundreds, right? And then we belonged to one of the corporates. I think there was 2 or 3 different corporates. I think we used a different term for that. It wasn't corporate. It was called something else. And we had this weekly calls with all these different centers, and I felt I was just having checklist calls. We were remote, a lot of us, and these are people that are, some of them are remote, some of them are in other offices, some of them are actually at the facility. How do you bring it all together? Maybe that's just an extreme example, but I would assume that most healthcare companies are functioning in a similar way because they just don't have one main office. They have facilities, they have pharmacies, they have all these facilities spread out. How do you bring it all together?
I will say that in the KPIs, not only do they need to be developed over time and get their buy-in, but they're also going to be different emphasis and focus depending on the maturity of the organization and the type of organization. So, for example, startup is going to be less concerned, although all of them should be concerned, but less concerned about the lead acquisition costs right away at first. So what I mean by that is a startup needs to put mechanics in place, mechanism in place to track and report and kind of start from scratch with lead acquisition. They're spending a lot of money. Their operational costs are overhead. It's going to be a lot because they don't have that foundation, right?
Sure.
And the lead cost as a KPI, of course they need to have it, but they shouldn't put that emphasis on there. But you have to communicate that to stakeholders so that they understand the purpose and the process. Because they're going to hear it from like somebody, family member or somebody like, oh, you're not looking at your cost per lead acquisition costs. However, if you are a mature organization that does not understand and hasn't established how to best track your lead acquisition cost, then you need to make that exercise more of a priority. You just need to dig in there. You need to figure out what the reporting looks like. And so I think that matters. I think a second thing I wanted to talk about is marketing aligning with finance to create a shared understanding of goals and metrics, right?
Yeah.
So not only do you need to do that with leadership and like your colleagues across the aisle, whether that be like product or right, okay,
Sure.
but finance, because you need to be aligned with finance because they're going to fund the stuff that you need. So you have to
Sure.
be local and make sure that they understand. And finance teams never understand marketing. They have
They don't.
not a
No.
clue. Why are you spending so much? Why does it act like that? And so much of marketing, just like sales, is based on relationships. Your ad buys, if you're doing it with an agency, do you have enough resources internally to where you're doing your own ad buys? Do you have relationships with your ad partners? What is your most expensive cost driver? You need to be able to articulate that to finance. And I think a lot of marketing professionals don't, because I think what happens is marketing is all encompassing. It's ads, it's specific product marketing, it's general brand marketing, it's all of these things, right? It's research and analytics. There's a bunch of stuff in there, but we haven't done a really good job. And then the creative. And I think what happens is the byproduct of marketing, everybody sees that. It's a nice logo, the commercials. And so it's creative led. And what happens is a lot of creative people who do really good putting stuff together are not business people. So, right, in marketing.
Sure.
So they want to lead with why an ad costs millions of dollars without explaining the finance behind that and the why.
Sure.
And so finance people are like, I'm confused.
Yeah.
Why do you, who cares what that looks like? And I understand your creative process, but I think oftentimes creative people are talking to finance that don't understand business and they shouldn't be the ones talking. They're the ones leading strategy and they don't necessarily need to be the ones leading the strategy for the organization and they can't really explain things. And they don't understand cost drivers often. These
Yeah.
marketing teams that are led by creatives, I know a creative who works at a very prestigious ad agency in Richmond, and he had his MBA, and he was one of the creative directors, multi-million, a huge agency. And I was so in like awe, and everybody was so in awe, and everybody wanted to work with him because he understood the numbers. He was an MBA, he was a lead creative, and he understood. And so I modeled that in terms of leadership from a marketing perspective. And do you get digital masters in digital communication, or what do you do? So when I went back to get my graduate degree, it was an MBA in healthcare because I just thought it was really important and I saw that gap. So that's something that I think we really need to do is create that shared understanding. Because like I said, one of the biggest mistakes we have is to be tone deaf in marketing and then continue to sell a product that both has high acquisition and maintenance costs after finance has raised a red flag.
Yeah.
Like, why are we doing this? Like that costs us too much to even sell it. And so I think there's a lack of alignment. And then I think the third thing, Al, is building an integrated multi-touch strategy into your overall marketing plan. And you touched on that first.
Yeah.
Understanding internally that looks where your customers now and be data driven in that while not abandoning what seems to work very well. It's very important that teams diversify marketing and mix approach. I can't tell you how many times teams are like, we've just always done it like that. I'm like,
Yeah.
have you tried a different thing? Don't abandon what's been working, but have you tried this?
We deal with this all the time. We actually,
Mhm.
what you just said is one of the challenges for us as a consulting agency. It's not just all about technical stuff, but also about being able to speak the language. Like you said earlier, with the finance team, you want to speak a little bit differently. Then you
Yeah.
would speak with the sales team. And don't forget customer service, because retention is a big part of
Huge.
marketing
Because acquisition
success.
costs are so high. It is
Exactly.
so it's so much better when you can actually retain. And you really bring up a good point as a marketing executive. Like we can't let a myopic focus, over focus on numbers, like really get in the way of building an emotionally resonant brand story that really resonates. Yeah. But we should know where we are, where we stand and where we are aligned with
Yeah.
our metrics and then all agree on
Yeah.
the measures that matter. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with you. Having different KPIs for different teams. As a marketing team, I think we often have our own KPIs, but we also have to have this interdepartmental KPIs, like you mentioned. And like sales enablement, for example, in the B2B marketing is huge. And one of the things that we do in our agency is that we got rid of this whole MQL, marketing qualified lead versus SQL. We have a lead that works for you, for the sales team. And if it doesn't work for you, let us know what we can do to change it. Like we completely that old school mentality. Oh, this is an MQL. It's no longer my problem. We got rid of that. I actually firmly believe if you're a B2B marketer, for example, for a well-established company,
Mhm.
sales is expecting you to deliver them like referrals, not even leads, because they just want to close. So you got to really get in there. What call a funnel, but what you said earlier.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So you really like, because they don't want leads. They want, a lot of them are commission based, right? So
Yeah.
they want a good lead.
Yeah.
And what we call good leads and what they call good leads is two different things. Having a common understanding what a good lead is very important. So,
I see what you're saying.
and and I'm glad you mentioned that. Another thing is I was listening to a podcast. It's a CMO podcast. I listened to a few. I don't know which one it was, but it was actually saying that good CMOs, the CMO, chief marketing officers or VPs of marketing, is one of the shortest
10 years?
10 years. Yeah, exactly. That's the word. Thank you. But that's not necessarily a negative thing. The good CMOs get elevated. They get promoted to being CEOs. And I've seen that happen so many times.
So I will tell you, my ambitions just on an individual level is I keep reporting to sales.
Yeah.
So I'm like, wait a minute, my supervisors are always sales. And so the trajectory for VP of sales, eventually you'll be operations because you understand it from like that perspective. And then you can move up and then maybe be CEO. I think maybe 15 years ago, to your point, CMOs didn't even think about running the companies, right? Because they were more creative led. Now that you've got all these B schools that are focused on healthcare, like the ones that I went to, then we're saying, wait a minute, I'm tired of you dismissing marketing. So I said, "Hey, I'm tired of reporting to these salespeople who have not a clue about marketing. I understand sales because I've been supporting sales my entire career. Let me move on over to sales so then I can move up and own marketing. Like truly own it, whether that be from an administrative standpoint or from an operational standpoint, a little bit further down in my career. But yeah, I'm in a weird hybrid position right now where I'm at, where I'm providing marketing strategy, sitting in the sales seat. But because our organization is just, we're very uniquely structured. So it's a very unique position that I have. But now this experience that I have being dead center in sales, including the sales ops position that I had before, is going to help to where I want to go. But I think more marketing folks are understanding that.
Yeah, I'm actually going to tell you, this is the first time I ever tell anybody, I'm in the process of writing a book called CMO Redefined, and actually talks about this stuff.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, so I will definitely run it by you to
Please
take a
put
look at
quotes.
it. Yeah,
Please put quotes that I said in the book. I want to be in the book.
I will. I'm probably gonna have you just take a look at it or parts of it, and
I'd be happy to. Do
contribute.
you have a publisher? Because I know of a publisher.
I'm looking for one of the self-publishing ones, but I'm open if you have a good publisher.
I have somebody who can help you self-publish. So you'll still be self-publisher, but she'll get you ready to go wherever you need to go. So
that's amazing.
In fact, I need to talk to her because I wrote a book. I need to send you the link. And
yeah, I'm still waiting for it. Yeah,
I know. And it's an ebook only right now. Because I wanted to work with a partner and I
want to have a physical book in my hand. Just
I know, me too. But I wanted to get it out.
Yeah.
So then I was like, okay, let me just get it out. And it went through a bunch of reiterations and I just did it by myself.
Yeah.
And it was personal. The book is not really, it's about how the personal will affect your life in general, including the professional.
I've worked for really good CMOs and I work for not very good ones. And every time I hear an absolute statement like CMO job is dying, I'm like, nope, it's just been redefined. Hence the title of my book.
I'm a perfect case study.
Yes.
For that.
Yes.
Because where are you going?
Yeah, because our target audience are CMOs. I'm not a CMO. Technically a fractional CMO for one of our clients. It's a startup, but I'm not a CMO, but I work with a lot of CMOs. Most of our clients, like I work with you, I work with a lot of CMOs. And I really know what a good CMO is. And a good CMO is just like you. It's not afraid of getting into the weeds. I'm telling you, like CTOs will always, unless it's a tech company, they're always staying CTOs. Salespeople on the sales. CMOs are the only executives that have the superpower, a good CMO that is, that they can actually move up and even go beyond the CEO role, whatever that is. But since we're running out of time, let's touch base on AI. I would assume that healthcare is very behind in AI adoption.
Yes, very much in a lot of ways. The ways that we are including it, like I was talking about at the top of the hour, it's going to be more of your vendors who provide solutions to traditional health plans and hospital systems and traditional health systems.
And there's also issues of HIPAA and privacy, so you have to be very careful with that.
So we're very leery as an industry of owning it.
Yeah.
And then we do a really good job of we claim to, and we try to do a very good job of stringent due diligence when we work with organizations who claim to be leaders in that space, and then how they can help work with us. So enhancing, for instance, like our chat box. I think that's one of the most basic things that you could do that's AI driven is when somebody wants to, are you looking to make an appointment? How can I help you? Just the chat box, right, on the website. I think that's probably the most basic.
Sure.
Helping us from ADA compliance standpoint
Yes.
to make sure that the website is optimized for ADA compliance from a user experience. So I think a lot of AI tools from a marketing perspective in healthcare is about making things more accessible, the website more accessible, making appointments more accessible with like telehealth, and then how AI can help that. So we've embraced AI, I think, as an industry, but I think we've done so cautiously and we understand it's to help and not to do.
Yeah.
For the most part. Now, I do know that it's been very dangerous, and I don't know that we want to get into all this because I don't know that we want to get into all this, but I do know that other organizations have used, not any that I've ever worked with. Let me just put that out there. Other organizations are using AI to do their claims adjustment. And I'm just going to say that doesn't necessarily end so well for those organizations. That's all I'm going to say. I think evidence of that. Maybe we shouldn't do that. Is just what I'm going to say. But I do think that there is a place for AI. I just don't know that you should take the human element out of whether you deny claims.
Yeah. One thing I learned interviewing an AI consultant was like have an AI committee, figure out a protocol for your company.
That's a really good idea.
What are the things you can do and you cannot do? And marketing should actually lead that as well. But you probably want to team up with CTOs or the tech team because there's a lot of that involved too. Look, we could talk about this all day. We are running out of time.
Okay.
We should have you in near future. But for our audience, where can they find you and contact you?
You know what? The safest place is probably, if you just want to contact me, literally just Tiffany Kobashigawa at Gmail.
Cool. Yes.
It's my personal email. It's just the easiest way. If you wanted to contact me, Tiffany Kobashigawa at Gmail.
Awesome. Yeah. And you're also on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, for sure. Sure. On LinkedIn, very active on LinkedIn. I'm working at a health plan. I'm very happy. They're great. And so I don't do so much of that now. And I'm actually doing a bunch of work. So normally I do a lot of writing articles and everything, but this position that I'm in is fairly new. And so all this extracurricular that I do on the weekends and the evenings in my own time, I've just put to the back burner, writing articles and digging in. And so I'm going to get back to it soon. So yeah, you can definitely find me on LinkedIn though.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. And
No, thanks for now.
Take care.